The narrative is locked on kinetic exchange. Travel warnings for Iran are issued. Analysts model the impact of a choke point closure on oil markets. This is the expected escalation vector, and it is a complete misdirection. The focus on missile trajectories and carrier groups is a legacy protocol. It fails to account for the adversary's actual objective. The target is not military defeat. It is a systemic solvency crisis. The real vector is silent. While legacy powers like NATO are bogged down in internal compliance protocols, the blueprint for asymmetric leverage is being executed. The systemic liability is not on the battlefield. It is coded into the digital and energy infrastructure that underpins the Western economy. Analysts at Arusi confirm the primary vulnerability is not a missile, but the deep ocean floor. We are talking about the 200 undersea fiber optic cables that carry 97% of global data and $10 trillion in daily financial transactions. The secondary vector is orbital, satellite blinding, a deniable attack that doesn't create debris, merely renders GPS and communication assets inert. The simultaneous execution of these two silent attacks creates a condition we call the blind Leviathan, a state with overwhelming kinetic power, but its central nervous system severed. It cannot see, it cannot communicate, and it cannot transact. It is a giant with no eyes and no ears. This is not a conventional cyber attack targeting data theft, a threat industrial security experts already warn is exposing energy grids. This is a physical kill switch for global liquidity. Sever the cables, blind the network, and the entire system freezes. It's a low-cost, high-impact solvency attack designed to trigger a cascading economic failure. This isn't a mistake, it's a feature of a hyper-leveraged global operating system. The motive is not conquest, it is solvency. Modern conflict is an economic event designed to bankrupt the adversary systemically. Weaker actors, cornered by sanctions and facing overwhelming conventional force, do not calculate victory in miles of captured territory. They calculate it in the opponent's cost of capital and domestic liability. They have pivoted from kinetic cost to insolvency cost. Consider the Russian Federation. CSIS analysis points to a significant domestic liability driven by the economic drain of an unpopular war. When the kinetic cost of a conventional campaign exceeds the state's internal financial stability, it triggers a solvency crisis. The state must then pivot. It is forced to find cheaper, higher leverage vectors of attack to rebalance the equation. This weakness forces a pivot to asymmetry. The new battlefield is not the front line, it's critical civilian infrastructure. The blueprint is to bypass military-on-military engagement and directly target the hyper-leveraged systems that underpin Western economies. Analysts at Kiteworks warn that AI security gaps are leaving energy infrastructure dangerously exposed to precisely these kinds of nation-state attacks. This is not a Russian anomaly. It is the operating manual for any cornered actor. As legacy alliances like NATO become preoccupied with internal ideological compliance protocols, documented by the Small Wars Journal, they project strategic vulnerability. An adversary facing a solvency crisis sees this not as strength, but as a critical opening. They will not attack a carrier group. They will trigger a solvency event, a limited, deniable attack on an oil choke point or a power grid, designed to collapse the system from within. The core of the asymmetric blueprint is the economics of lethality. According to analysts at Rusi, a modern main battle tank represents a capital asset worth approximately $5 million. A commercially available FPV drone, modified for a kinetic payload, costs $500. This is not a 10x or 100x cost differential, it is a 10,000x differential. The tank is a product of a legacy military-industrial complex. The drone is a product of the global consumer supply chain. This is a mathematical arbitrage opportunity being exploited on the battlefield. This radical inversion of kinetic cost is called the democratization of violence. The term signifies the collapse of the state's monopoly on high-impact force. Historically, projecting significant power required a nation-state's resources, shipyards, factories, a tax base. Today, the ability to disable critical infrastructure is available to any actor with a credit card and an internet connection. This decentralizes the power to trigger a systemic solvency crisis, moving it from state capitals to non-state actors or cornered regimes. The strategic objective is not to defeat a military, but to bankrupt a system. The attacker is not calculating battlefield wins. They are calculating the defender's cascading financial liabilities. A single successful strike on energy infrastructure, as analysts warn, is a persistent risk, does not just remove an asset. It triggers insurance market panic, supply chain disruption, and emergency government spending. The attacker risks a few $1,000s to force the defender into a multi-billion-dollar liquidity crisis. This is not warfare. It is an economic launch-on-warning protocol, designed to bleed a superior power white without ever engaging its primary military leverage. The primary vector of attack is not a border crossing. It is a balance sheet. The operational theater is not a battlefield. It is the global network of systemic liability. We call these staging areas gray zones, regions of calculated instability designed to function as proxy laboratories for asymmetric warfare. Analysts monitor domestic volatility in nations like Canada or South Africa, not as isolated crises, but as stress tests. These are live fire exercises for solvency attacks. A controlled disruption of a minor logistical hub there provides the blueprint for a decapitating strike on a primary one. The objective is to refine the tactics needed to target hyper-leveraged, non-military systems. Reports from Kiteworks confirm that AI security gaps are leaving critical energy infrastructure exposed to nation-state attacks. The gray zone is where these attack methodologies are perfected before deployment against primary targets. While these asymmetric blueprints are being finalized, legacy alliances like NATO are consumed by internal compliance. Analysis from the Small Wars Journal details how ideological commitments can limit strategic flexibility in a crisis. This project's weakness, creating the exact vulnerability that gray zone operations are designed to exploit. The operational endgame is not territorial conquest. It is economic contagion. A deniable event staged from a gray zone, a limited kinetic event in an oil choke point, as feared by Bloomberg analysts regarding Iran, or a cyber attack on a Western power grid, is a solvency attack. Its kinetic cost is low, its economic leverage is near infinite. As U.S. travel warnings for regions like Iran escalate, they signal the priming of these kinetic triggers. The gray zone is not a place, it is a strategy. It is the launch pad for an attack designed to force a cascade failure in the West's financial operating system, lowering the threshold for a launch-on-warning nuclear posture as the final, desperate act of a crippled power. The launch-on-warning doctrine is not a strategy. It is a mathematical protocol designed to guarantee retaliatory capability. The logic is zero-sum. If early warning systems detect a high-confidence indicator of an incoming nuclear strike, a retaliatory launch is executed before the first enemy asset impacts. This ensures the adversary cannot achieve a successful first strike. It is a pre-programmed response to a kinetic threat. This protocol is now the primary systemic liability. An adversary understands the kinetic cost of engaging a superior military is prohibitive. Instead, they deploy an asymmetric vector. As analysts at Kiteworks warn, AI security gaps leave critical infrastructure exposed to nation-state attacks. This vulnerability is not limited to the energy sector. It extends to the command, control, and communications (C3) networks that underpin nuclear deterrence. The attack vector is therefore not a missile. It is a signal. A deniable cyber attack that blinds the radar system creates the fog of digital war. The commander is presented with two inputs, a blank screen and a functioning launch-on-warning protocol. Is the system failure a benign glitch, or is it the prelude to a decapitation strike that has already neutralized their eyes and ears? The absence of data becomes the data. In this scenario, the commander is forced into a solvency calculation. The risk of inaction, the complete loss of second strike capability, becomes mathematically greater than the risk of launching on false pretenses. The fear of being disarmed forces the launch. According to CSIS analysis, this exploits the very logic of deterrence, turning a defensive protocol into an offensive accelerant. The weaker actor bypasses the battlefield entirely and attacks the decision-making process itself, lowering the nuclear threshold without ever launching a missile. The calibration shot will not be a missile, it will be a blackout. The systemic liability is not military, it is economic. Within the next 12 months, expect a targeted, deniable cyber attack on the industrial control systems of a European liquefied natural gas terminal. This is a low-kinetic, cost, high-leverage solvency probe. Reports from industrial cyber confirm that AI security gaps leave this exact infrastructure exposed to nation-state attacks. It bypasses NATO's force posture, which, as Small Wars Journal notes, is increasingly consumed by internal compliance protocols, projecting strategic inertia. The event will be attributed to non-state actors or remain officially unsolved. The objective is not destruction. It is data collection on systemic fragility. It is designed to test the financial system's reaction to a sudden energy constriction, measuring the precise kinetic cost required to trigger a liquidity crisis. The event is a mathematical prerequisite.